Hey guys, I just had a great conversation with Kim Sorrelle, and you have to hear her. She is a tremendous host, and I had the great pleasure of presenting to your audience the life of Marian Anderson. And thanks for tuning in.
Welcome to the show. I'm so glad you're here. You're going to be so glad you're here. I'm Kim Sorrelle. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. I get to do a lot of fun things in life, but my favorite thing to do is meet people. And I get to meet some of the most incredible people. And today I have Emile Henwood with me, who has had this life that has been so varied, but yet so driven, like just incredible. All the things that he's done with crew in the Navy and flying business and on and on and on. And then decided to write this book about sort of a hometown hero for him and someone that you want to know about. And maybe have never heard of before, but you're going to be blown away when we talk about this woman's story. You're going to love it. So thanks for being with us. And thank you, Emile, for being here today. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Kim, very much. I'm very happy to be here and talk to your audience.
Yeah, well, great. Yeah, so Emile, I would like to start kind of from the beginning. And I want people to know you, to get to know you. So I would like to hear about 8-year-old Emile.
8-year-old Emile?
Mm-hmm.
Well, when Emile was 8 to 10 years old back in 1955 and 1957, I was the oldest of 9 children, and we all lived in the same neighborhood in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I would go over to my grandparents' home, and they would be listening to these recordings made by all these classical singers, Mario Lanza, Marian Anderson, and I was just bored to death. I couldn't stand it at that age. I wanted to listen to rock and roll, and but I didn't realize at the time, 60 some years ago, uh, I was being programmed to learn more about this great Philadelphian, great American named Marian Anderson, the greatest concert singer of the 20th century, and to this day, actually. So
Yeah.
I feel privileged to have been drawn back to be able to uh, write her biography. Actually, I wrote her 24th biography. People today have forgotten her, but I haven't, and I'm trying to help people remember who she was, because she was such a great person.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So oldest of 9 kids.
Yeah.
That's a heavy mantle to carry. Like, pretty easy.
Yeah. I took
Yeah.
all the lumps. My father was a light heavyweight boxing champion in the Navy during World War II. So every time I messed up or came home with a bad report card, it was time for a boxing lesson. So I learned quick, and all my siblings under me just watched the show all the time.
Yeah, well, maybe they got some tips watching the show, but whatever. Yeah, so with all the things that you've done in life, at 8 years old, did you have any idea what your life was going to bring? Did you have goals? You said your father was in the service. Like, was it natural then for you to go, yeah, someday I want to be in the Navy?
I was in the Navy, and I was the third generation Navy person in my family. My father was second. My great uncle Grover was first generation. He served as a master chief, one of the first ever master chief electricians during the Spanish American War and World War One. And my son, I'm very blessed, is a graduate of the Naval Academy. He's fourth generation, and he's now a full Navy captain, soon to probably be an admiral in a couple of years. So yeah, we're a Navy through and through.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, my dad was in the Navy, and it was always interesting to me because he loved the food. And I always thought, wow, because you hear military food's not that great, airplane food, certain food people just don't think is good all the time, right? And military food, I always thought, man, but then I had my grandma's cooking, and I went, wow, I can see why he thought the Navy food was good, because unfortunately that woman could not stir a pot of beans to save her life. But he loved the Navy. He appreciated it so much. In fact, two of my sons ended up going into the Navy, and he was certainly
Really?
influence. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had one who was a nuke
Oh, smart kid,
submarine.
smart kid.
Yeah, yeah, a smart kid. He works for NASA now. So yeah,
Mhm.
he is a smart kid. And the other one went into something, but then married a foreign national, and so he had to change. And anyway, he's a doctor now, whatever. But so yeah, the Navy. The Navy really forms people. I think quite often the military life, the military experience is sort of untold.
Mhm.
Because I see what it did for my sons, and it was good. Like there are some really great things about
Right.
serving your country and serving that way. So thank you for your service. And what would you say to people who maybe they're thinking, uh, should I go in the service? Is it a good thing to do?
Well, if you want to make a choice of which service branch to go into, I say just look at the different aspects of them. If you go in the Army, you're going to be out in a muddy field, sleeping in a pup tent, getting your meals, cooking them yourself on a campfire a lot of the time. You go in the Navy, you go on a ship, you're going to be getting first class meals, and you get a place to same place to sleep every night, and you learn a trade. And it's the I think I of the four service branches, I think the Navy. Well, it's something that we really need, and we have to pray for our Navy these days, Kim, because over in over in the Mediterranean, in the Far East, Near East, they're fighting a war. They're fighting harder than they ever fought since World War II. Right now, they're attacking our ships. They're attacking all the shipping traffic, the commercial shipping traffic, and we're over there trying to protect them. And we've been doing that for almost 250 years, protecting because we're where we are surrounded by water on both sides. The sea is very important to our survival, and getting the goods transported here is very important. So the Navy is out there since the Barbary Coast pirates back in the early 1800s, protecting us and protecting the shipping lanes so that we can get the goods and services we need all the time. And thank God for them. They're really a great group of guys.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said that. I'm so glad you talked about that because so often we don't know what is happening all around the world or what's going on, especially with our military. And to know that our Navy is out there and they're active and they're helping us in so many ways that are unseen, that if they weren't there, who knows what life would be like here. And so, yeah, great appreciation for anyone who serves, anyone who has served, all the military. And yes, everybody, we need to pray for them for sure, for sure, for sure. It's kind of funny when my first son was going to go into the Navy, I said, well, no, you're not. And he said, well, Mom, you don't have a choice. And I said, well, certainly I have a choice. I'm your mother. And I was during the Vietnam time. And during that time, when folks were coming home, it was horrible. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
they were coming home to people spitting on them and protesting. And it was just awful. And it was such an awful conflict that was going on at home and abroad. And I thought, man, please, Lord Jesus, let there not be a war when my sons are old enough to go into the military, if they
Right.
choose to. And so I ended up, I said to him, son, he's the only reason he was telling me basically was because he needed a social security card. And I had it. And I said, I'm going to look in one place. I'm going to pray. I'm going to look in one place. And if your social security card is there, then you have my blessing. You can go into the Navy. But if it's not there, you have to promise me you're not going to go into the Navy. And
Yeah.
he said,
Well,
he
I was
agreed.
in during the Vietnam era. I went through Navy flight school, and I didn't get chosen to go overseas. And in hindsight, I think that was a blessing because that was a horrible thing that our country got into. Really was. I know you don't like to talk about politics on your show, but it was not a good thing for the United States to do. And look at today. They're one of our best friends.
Right,
It's
right.
I know people who are going over there on vacations on a regular basis. It's a beautiful country, and we almost destroyed it, and for nothing.
Right.
So
Right. No, no.
But I
There.
thank God that when I got my wings out of Navy flight school, that Congress was winding down the funds for the war in Vietnam, and therefore they didn't have any fleet seats available. So I got stashed at a desk job in Washington D.C. And I thought, oh, this is the end of my career. But when I got there, right after I got there, the Navy had cut back all the flying time in the squadrons, the active duty squadrons on the ships, to 25 hours a month. And I said, this is not going to help me as far as my career. I wanted to go on to become a commercial pilot, which I did. And but when I got to Washington, I was able to fly between 75 and 90 hours a month, in addition to the regular job that I had at the Washington Navy Yard. So to me, the Navy is a great organization. I can't complain. And
Yeah,
I'm so,
right. Well, and for my sons too, they went to college on the GI Bill. So thank you everybody
yeah,
for paying your taxes and paying for
right.
your kids' schooling. But then they're out serving the world. So so it's a good thing. So yeah, I have great admiration and appreciation. And
Well,
so
I use the GI Bill to get my commercial pilot's license. I have a multi-engine instrument rating also, a commercial pilot. And my dream was to fly for the airlines, but the airlines were not hiring anybody unless they had multi-engine jet time. And I was multi-engine prop time. So I went on to establish a company with my father, and went on to establish six more companies after that. I was a serial entrepreneur after that. And today I've finally landed my plane as an author and speaker on the life of a great Philadelphian and American named Marian Anderson. I'm very happy to be here with you today to talk to her, to talk to
yeah,
your audience about her.
yeah, that's so great. So yes, so you've had this long career, this business career. You were on crew team, very successful, doing that, rowing. Do you still row, by the way?
No, that's a crazy sport. I love rowing. It got me a full college scholarship. I was on U.S. national teams competing overseas and won 2 gold medals and 2 silver medals. But I don't know if rowing is a very big sport in your part of the country. Here in Philadelphia, this is the headquarters of rowing for the world. And I had the fortunate opportunity to row for a wonderful college, St. Joseph's University here in Philadelphia, and on a full rowing scholarship. The problem with rowing is it's very expensive. You have to have waterfront property. The equipment, the boats, the shells, and the oars are extremely expensive. You're talking today for an 8-oared shell about $60,000. And you sit on your butt, you go backwards, you can't see where you're going, and you can't make any money at it. So it's a crazy sport. it's
Yeah, but you
then
got some gold medals and it's a college scholarship. So in a way, that's kind of making money,
right,
I guess.
right.
Yeah. So here you are. You've had this interesting life, oldest of 9, college scholarship on the rowing team, national recognition in rowing, started businesses, all this stuff. And then from the time you were young, listening, Marian
Mm-hmm.
Anderson, to all of a sudden, gosh, maybe I'll write a book about her. Like that seems like quite a road to get to the point where it's like, wow, I need to look into this woman some more.
Well, actually, when I was back in the Navy, I almost died in an airplane crash. And I always wondered all these years why the Lord kept me around for so long. And now I know why, because he wants me to help the world become aware of who Marian Anderson was and what she contributed to our country and to our world, just with her voice, her magnificent contralto voice. And I feel very privileged to be able to do that. So um, let's go. What are your questions, Kim? Let's go.
Okay, so you live in Philly, and that's where she's from, and there's a museum there. Her home has become a museum, I believe, right?
Yes.
And so that's kind of where your journey began? Was visiting there? Is that how
No,
it?
it actually began when I was about 8 or 10 years old, listening to her records, which I didn't like at the time because I was more into rock and roll, of course. But 60 years goes by, and then I found out that they have this event every year in the main music center in Philadelphia, downtown Philadelphia, called the Kimmel Center, and it was a place called Verizon Hall, and they had an event called the Marian Anderson Awards every year, and I decided just out of the clear blue that I'd go to it one year. And it was in 2018, I believe, and so that began my journey. I rejoined Marian Anderson at that point, and when I discovered her house museum, the house that she bought in 1924 with the money that she earned from the contract she had with RCA Victor. She was the first Black recording artist for RCA Victor in 1924, and she used the money from that contract to purchase a home in South Philadelphia, just a small row home. And she wanted her mother and sisters to have a safe place to live when she was always on the road doing her gigs all over the South back then and the Northeast. So I went there and I walked in and I'm looking at all these pictures, all these candid pictures of her with all these people who I recognized immediately, world leaders, presidents, A-list celebrities galore. And I said, who is this woman? And here I am, 72 years old, and I left there embarrassed and absolutely embarrassed that how could I live all my life and get this old and not know that I was living in the vicinity of such greatness? And she was a great person. She's responsible for the Civil Rights Act in our country. That's a story in itself. And she 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 had to leave this country in 1928 and 1930 to go to Europe to further her career because classical singers for blacks back then was not something people were interested in hearing. They were more interested in hearing their jazz and all their nightclub type songs. But she was dedicated to classical music from the time she was 6 years old. So she goes to Europe to further get further training in languages and classical music, and she wound up being able to sing classical music solo with just a piano accompanying her in 9 different languages she could sing, and she wound up being able to speak 5 of them fluently. And she went to Europe and she was declared to be part of Europe's music royalty. There was you've heard of Beatlemania being our age, right? Well, 30 years before Beatlemania came, there was Marian fever all over Europe, bigger than Beatlemania. And she appeared in 142 solo concerts between September of 1933 and April of 1934. 142 solo concerts all over Europe, mostly Scandinavia and Russia. And Marian fever broke out, and everybody wanted to hear her. And all those concerts were filled, standing room only, with kings and queens and heads of state coming to hear her to see what this Marian fever was all about. And she was a top celebrity throughout the world. And then she came back after that to the United States, and she couldn't even get a hotel room in a decent hotel anywhere she went. So that's the reason she went there to get trained and further her career. But she was very focused on her singing. She believed that the reason she had the voice she had was because God gave it to her, and it was everything that was in her voice she attributed to God. And she was a very religious. She was a cradle to grave devout Baptist, and there's a lot that she did in her lifetime that people today should know about. And in fact, I'm writing my second book about her right now. The first book, as you know, was a chronological listing of her entire life from the time she was born until 20 years after she died, right down, year by year by year. This is a different book. I'm writing stories about her, about her life and about her personal offstage life, which was 90% of who she was as a trailblazing Christian humanitarian, and a very generous lady too. So that's where I
Yeah.
am right now. I'm halfway through the second book, and it'll be out probably by November.
Oh,
It's
wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, and it'd be great to hear the stories, to be able to read the stories. So I think it's incredible that she was given this platform, and but she's embraced in Europe, she's embraced in Scandinavia and Russia, she's embraced there. Had a bit of a struggle here though, and but then was part of the civil rights movement in such a big way, and yet we don't hear about her. We hear about some of the other great leaders of the civil rights movement, but she was the catalyst. Like she was the one that said, "Hey, let's treat this a different way." And even Martin Luther King Jr. took his cue from her. So I'd love for you to talk about that a bit.
okay. Well, in 1939, her manager Saul Horrick and the president of the NAACP, as well as the president of Howard University down in Washington, wanted to bring her to Washington for a concert. And they knew they had to have a big hall because people wanted to hear her. And so they went to Constitution Hall. The owners of Constitution Hall were the Daughters of the American Revolution, DAR. And they had a restriction in their contracts saying white performers only. They were a very southern city, abiding by the Jim Crow laws of the time. So they couldn't get her in. And Eleanor Roosevelt, who was her good friend since 1936, she went to Franklin Roosevelt and said, "We have to do something about this." Eleanor Roosevelt resigned her membership from the Daughters of the American Revolution, and hundreds, probably thousands, I don't know how many, but a lot of ladies followed her suit and resigned from the Daughters of the American Revolution. And they still wouldn't let her play at the Constitution Hall. So Eleanor goes to Franklin, her husband, and says, "Hey, we have to do something about this." And he says, "She can sing from the top of the Washington Monument if she wants." He knew her too. And so Eleanor then goes to Howard Ickes, who was the Secretary of the Interior, who controlled the national parks. And the Lincoln Memorial, which was at that time in 1939, was built in 22, so it was 17 years old. And it had never really been used for any kind of outdoor public demonstration at all. So she goes to Howard Ickes, and he gets her to gives her permission to sing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, the first ever time the Lincoln Memorial and that whole National Mall with the beautiful setting there, overlooking the Washington Monument. He goes and she wound up being able to sing there on Easter Sunday, April 9th, 1939. And instead of only 4,500 people being able to come to hear her in Constitution Hall, 75,000 people, more than 75,000 people showed up on the National Mall. And it was the first ever integrated event in the whole city of Washington. And it was also broadcast live by NBC to the entire nation. Millions of people heard her. And so she knocked it out of the park. She really did knock it out of the park. And that historians record that as the very beginning of the modern civil rights era. This is 25 years before President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Bill into act in 1964. This was back in the Stone Ages when they were hanging black people, and it was just a horrible time, a very dark time in our country. And she had this huge concert, 75,000 people, totally integrated, never happened before in the city of Washington, D.C. And actually, that was the first ever outdoor classical music concert ever in the history of our country back then. And she set the tone. And immediately after that, she became a world class hero. I mean, people knew her throughout the world, and that was the beginning of her career. Prior to that, her average income was about 238,000 a year. After that, her average income, you ready for this? For 1941, 41, $4 million a year.
Wow.
That's a lot of money, even
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. Do you have any idea what that translates into today's money?
Pardon me?
Do you have any idea what that translates into in today's money?
It's probably in the neighborhood of 15 to $20 million a year today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's a
very
lot of money. And
successful.
you know what, Kim?
Yeah.
She gave it all away. She was extremely generous. She gave it all away quietly and anonymously to a lot of worthy causes for children, mostly for children and music. She gave it all away.
Wow.
So that the Bible tells us in Matthew, I think, chapter 3, verse 4, that when you give generously. Don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And she did it quietly, and she really benefited a lot of institutions around the world with her generosity.
Yeah. Well, that's what amazes me about her is that she had this huge voice, this incredible talent, but then she used her talent not to make money for herself or not for fame and glory, but because she was known, people listened to her. Because of her stage presence, she had a voice to be able to meet with the people, like you said, all the people that were on the walls, pictures of her with whoever. I mean, Gandhi, for goodness sake, and she had a message of peace. You know, her message wasn't, "Hey, I'm famous. I'm so cool. I'm great. I'm making a lot of money." But her message was entirely different than that. How would you explain her message?
Her message was, whatever you hear from me is not from me. It's a gift I have from God. And she wanted people to know that there were certain principles that she lived by. And in fact, at that concert that I just mentioned in 1939, that was broadcast all over the country, in 1939, there was a very bright, precocious 10-year-old boy living in Atlanta, Georgia, who heard that and never forgot it and followed her ever since then. And that was Martin Luther King. When Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech on those same Lincoln Memorial steps in 1963, August 28th, 1963, in front of 250,000 people, totally integrated, he used the same words from the opening lyrics of Marian Anderson's song in 1939. It was one of the versions of America, My Country 'Tis of Thee, Sweet Land of Liberty, to Thee we sing. Land where my fathers died, land of thy pilgrims' pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. That I'm not going to sing it. They're the words, but and Martin Luther King in '63 repeated those exact words. Then after he said, "Let freedom ring," he went in to say, "Let freedom ring from the Alleghenies in Pennsylvania, from the Adirondacks. Let freedom ring from the Adirondacks in New York. Let freedom ring from the Grand Canyon of Colorado." Blah blah blah. And that is probably one of the most famous speeches in history. And he copied that from Marian Anderson's song. And I just want to bring you up to speed. Most recently, when President Trump, during his inauguration, he had 3 religious leaders pray for him during his inauguration. Let me get rid of this. Hold on. Sorry. He had three religious leaders pray for him during his inauguration on January 20th. First was a Jewish rabbi. The second was a Protestant minister. Third one was a Catholic priest. The Protestant minister, a gentleman named, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, but he's from Detroit. He used the same words that Martin Luther King used that were given to Martin Luther King by Marian Anderson. He used those same words in his, he did a rendition of Martin Luther King's speech, exactly word for word, and the words that Marian Anderson gave them. So she lives on today. She lives on today.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, and you mentioned she had certain principles that she lived by. And
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So talk about those.
Well, the principles, they're straight out of the Bible from the book of to the Romans that St. Paul wrote in chapter 12, verses 14 through 21. I don't have them memorized. I don't have a that kind of a memory, but people can look up the Marian Anderson. I call them the Marian Anderson principles. And she taught those principles to other people all the time. And one of the people that a lot of people in your audience might be interested in knowing about was Jackie Robinson, the famous black baseball player who integrated baseball in 1947. Turns out that Saul Horrick, Marion's manager since 1935, was he lived in Brooklyn and he was a Brooklyn Dodgers fan. And anybody who saw the movie 42 about Jackie Robinson knows who Branch Rickey is. Branch Rickey was the president of the Brooklyn Dodgers. His management gave him the go ahead in 1943 to integrate baseball and to find the right man, quote, right man. He called it the noble experiment to integrate baseball. And so he found Saul Horrick, who had been managing Marian Anderson during this whole time when she was since 1935 on through the 1939 Easter Sunday concert. And Marian learned she was able to handle all the discrimination and all the persecution that she got from people, and she never treated them that way to herself. She always treated her persecutors with grace and dignity. And they knew that Jackie Robinson rather was a hothead. He was a top athlete. He was a four-letter uh, athlete at UCLA back in the 30s, but he had a very short fuse, especially when people would torment him about his race. And they knew that although he was the guy they wanted on the baseball field, what was going on between his ears had to be changed, because if he was a hothead on the baseball field in front of 30,000 people at a ballpark, that would be the end of the noble experiment, and it would set back baseball and professional sports and a lot of other things that are going on, thank God, today by 15 to 20 years. So they had to make sure that Jackie Robinson was the man that he had to be. So Saul Horrick became Jackie Robinson's de facto baseball agent for his entire career. And he got Marian Anderson to coach up Jackie Robinson starting in 1945, 2 years before he made his debut in 1947 on the baseball field. And thank God for that, because if that failed, it would have set back the baseball at least 15. They knew it was going to cost them 15 to 20 years if it didn't go right. So she turned Jackie Robinson into the Marian Anderson of sports. And she did that for a lot of people. She did that for a lot of people. And that produced something called what is recognized today as the Anderson effect. And by the Anderson effect, because him coming into baseball helped bring baseball up 15 to 20 years, and other sports and all the professional celebrities and black people that are stars today in movies and and in the media. If Jackie Robinson had not been able to do that, thanks to Rob and Marian Anderson, their careers today, what they should do is look back 15 years, see where they were 15 years ago, and that's where they would be today. That's what their personal Anderson effect is that Marian Anderson produced to this day,
Wow.
even all the stars that we see today.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah. She was quite a lady. And I cannot imagine would have been easy to, like you mentioned, not even be able to get into the best hotel rooms and not being able to speak because the DAR had this rule about, only white performers, and which ended up being an incredible blessing, right? Because she reached so many more people than she would have had she performed in that hall. But still, that rule should never have existed to begin with. But she had to deal with a lot of stuff, a whole lot of stuff, but kept her head high and didn't let it affect her negatively. But I can't imagine that being an easy thing to do.
Kim, it was so bad. Atlantic City in New Jersey is about 60 miles east of Philadelphia. She was invited to come to Atlantic City and to give a concert. And she gave a concert, standing room only, and took down the house. The mayor of Atlantic City comes out and gives her one of those symbolic keys to the city. And that night, she couldn't even get a hotel room in Atlantic City. Can you imagine that? I mean, when Jackie Robinson came to Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Phillies manager, a guy named Ben Chapman, was one of the biggest bigots in baseball. And he did everything he could to shake Jackie Robinson when he was coming up to bat, calling him all sorts of names, releasing a black cat onto the field, so on and so forth. And Jackie never responded to that. And when Jackie was in Philadelphia, the team, the Dodgers, would stay in the top hotel in Philadelphia at the time. It's still here. It's called the Benjamin Franklin Hotel. It's an old line, beautiful hotel. He was not able to stay with his team. He had to go and stay and rent a bed at the local YMCA when he came to Philadelphia. Mm. And finally, thank God, in 2020, the city of Philadelphia issued a formal apology through a resolution to his widow, who's still alive, apologizing for their behavior in Philadelphia back then. So, it was a different world back then. You can't blame the Daughters of the American Revolution, because that was just the way things were. And thank God I tell people, thank God for the Daughters of the American Revolution, that they were that way, because otherwise only 4,500 people would have heard her, and that's it. Now, as it turned out, 75,000 people heard her live all over the country. And it led to Martin Luther King and a lot of other things coming down the road. Right. So thank God for the DAR.
Yeah. Yeah, always look for the silver lining, right?
By the way, I want to give credit to the Daughters of the American Revolution. They made a donation last summer to the Marian Anderson Museum here in Philadelphia of $150,000 to restore the museum where they had some water damage. And it's again a different world today than it was back then. Thank God.
Yeah, no kidding. Good for the DAR. That is really good. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So she was a peacekeeper in so many ways. So but what I love about her, when I read about her and your book and whatever, is that she was a very peaceful peacekeeper. Right? Like she didn't feel like she had to shout anything from the mountaintops or, tell people what they're doing wrong or what they should be doing right. But it was just really the example of her life that
exactly
the loudest.
Exactly. She was so powerful that the United States government recognized that she was so peaceful in the face of adversity, and she never criticized anybody for anything. She always praised people all the time. and she was an extremely humble and forgiving person. And she was a lover of Jesus Christ. She was a true Christian, and she would be able to, just with her voice, change people's attitudes. People would. She never spoke out in a militant way about anything concerning the plight back then, civil rights. She just sang. All she did was sing, and with her God-given voice, and it changed people's hearts. So much so that the State Department, our United States State Department, recognized the power that she had. And during the Cold War, when we were sending our artists overseas, the Russians and the Chinese were sending their artists over here, and they were trying to push communism, and we were trying to promote capitalism. They chose Marian Anderson, and she was actually a contracted asset of the State Department to go to Southeast Asia in 1957, which was a hotbed right before Vietnam. And she visited 12 countries from September through November and sang 26 concerts, met with every head of state in all those 12 countries, gave press conferences, and so on. And she did a magnificent job of promoting capitalism. And they knew before they sent her, the State Department had information that if you're going to try to change the hearts of the people from the largest country in that Southeastern Asia section of the world, which is India, they knew that rather than sending 1,000 missionaries, they should send just one saint, and they chose her.
Wow.
And they sent Marian Anderson. And I want to tell you, I checked the immigration records from the 1960s on. India, the country of India, has more immigrants that have come to the United States than every other country in the world combined. And I think it's because they saw her.
Wow.
And the communists were saying, yeah, the democracy is great, but the way they treat their minorities is really terrible. And that wasn't the case. And she made that clear in her press conferences and her interviews that she gave, and all the people from the heads of state that she touched. And
wow. You look at the people that have come from, so many people from India that are leading corporations here in America, and are some of the most brilliant people in the world, I believe, have come from India. And
yeah,
we get to be the recipients of their wisdom and their knowledge. And I don't know, I love my Indian friends. I got to say, that's amazing to think that that's
yeah.
a door opened. That she kind of opened that door that said, hey, this is a good place.
She definitely was a contributing factor to opening the door to the number of people from India who have come here since then. No question about it.
Wow. Wow, that's pretty cool.
So she's really changed. She really did change the world with her voice. She really did.
Yeah. Well, and
Kim, I would encourage people who don't know her. Most people who are listening to this a lot of them probably never heard her name before. Just Google Marian Anderson on the internet. Go to the Wikipedia page they have that's there for, and look at all the links, and be prepared to spend several hours doing it, or go back to it a few times. It's out there. It's out there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think, in today's world, quite often we think, well, if you're going to change the world, you got to be loud. You got to be on stages talking. You've got to be creating documents to hand out. You've got to be doing all kinds of things that are more kind of in your face sort of things to do. But you look at the people who really have changed the world, truly have had a worldwide impact. And they're like Marian, like Gandhi wasn't out there just, thumping on doors and standing on a soapbox. And, it's amazing to me how much more can be done when you lead by example than when you just tell people what to do.
When she went to India, actually, you mentioned Gandhi a few times. I just want to give you a little background about Gandhi and Marian Anderson. when Marian Anderson went to India in 1957, in October of 57, she was the first ever foreign diplomat to be invited to speak at the Gandhi Memorial. First ever. And she gave a very nice talk, and she sang a song in honor of Gandhi, which she knew was one of his favorite songs. And there were thousands of people listening live in the audience. That's online. You can find that online. And
Wow. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So she was a groundbreaker. I mean, she was the first of this, the first of that, the first of this, whatever. And it's not always being the easy road to be the first of anything. You were the first of nine. I mean, you
yeah,
know what challenges that is, just to be the first of nine in a family. But some of the things that she did, where she was a trailblazer, she was the one who it was uncharted territory. And so I would imagine there had to be some times where she's on her knees going, Lord, I hope this goes well, like, right? Because it's not like she had somebody's example to follow, it's not like it was proven ground, but she was willing. She had the courage and the faith to go on and do whatever it was and blaze whatever trail, which I think is so admirable.
yeah. She definitely knew that with God, all things were possible. That was one of her mottos. She knew that. And I, we were talking earlier about the Marian fever and comparing it to Beatlemania. Well, Beatlemania was four guys with the sound with instruments, multiple instruments, guitars and drums, and so on and so forth, with a lot of sound augmentation, microphones, and and for guys that didn't even have very good voices to begin with. And she sang solo with only a piano accompanying her by herself to classical music uh, goers. And the Beatles were so popular, and she was extremely popular just from the classical music side. And the Beatles were not taking anything away from them, because they were one of my boyhood heroes. But they were four guys that really, like I said, didn't have very good voices and jumped around a lot and looked strange. But they were singing popular music, not classical music, popular music, which has a much wider audience to begin with. And that's how they became famous. Marian became famous with just her voice in the classical music world throughout the world. So
Yeah.
that's there's really no comparison, but I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah. People that I know that really understand music, friends of mine, Kathy Joe, I'm thinking of one in particular who truly understands music. She'll say, I mean, there are great singers and then there are singers. And there are
Mm-hmm.
singers that do really well because of their personality, the way they look, the way they write songs, they'll do great, but they're not necessarily the top voices of the world, right? And then there's people like Marian, who one of the, if not the, but one of the very top voices of our day, of the times. Like, she was so talented that it drew people in. And then she was able to share her heart through her music, because
Mm-hmm.
she first drew all these people in because of her voice. So what an incredible thing. It's just
Yes.
amazing. Yeah. Yeah. So you're writing
Well,
the second book and it's stories. Can you share a story or two with us?
well, sure. There was a time in 1934 when, to this day, one of the largest music festivals in the world is the Salzburg Music Festival in Austria, and that was the setting. Actually, if you remember the
Sound of
the
Music?
movie, huh? Sound of
Sound of
Music,
Music.
exactly, exactly. Julie Andrews and so on. That was the setting. She wanted to go there, and she put an application in to appear in the Salzburg Music Festival. And because she was black again, and because the Nazis were a big influence there, They were trying to stamp out all things non-Aryan, primarily Jews and blacks, and religion. And because Marian Anderson was black, she was a female, and she always ended every one of her classical concerts with Negro spirituals, which was her testimony to her Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. They were actually prayer songs that she sang, and they knew this, and they told her, if you sing your spirituals, we're going to put you in jail.
Mm.
And
Wow.
so she came anyway. She came uninvited. They didn't invite her, but she came anyway, and she sang the first night in a smaller venue, in a hotel venue. People heard her. Word spread very quickly, and all these top musicians from throughout the world who were in town for that music festival heard it and came to hear her in a larger venue, in a music hall. And she sang, and the top music personality of the day was an Italian conductor and composer named Arturo Toscanini. Arturo Toscanini was born in 1867. He was an older man at the time, and he had an eidetic memory. He remembered everything about every voice, everywhere he went. At the intermission, he goes up to her and embraces Marian Anderson and said, in front of all these world-class musicians, "Yours is a voice one is only privileged to hear once in 100 years." He said that,
Oh,
and that spread like wildfire. That became when Saul Horrocks started managing her the year later. He called that the Anderson fairy tale, and he made a lot of hay out of that. And it was true. And I truly believe that it was once in 100 years at that point in 1934. And I don't think there's been a better voice ever since then, ever since. And, you know, so there you go. That's the level of person that she was. And she changed the world with her voice.
wow. Wow. That's so
And it wasn't
amazing.
just her voice; it was her personality and she was inspirational. People who met her within 5 minutes, and not even knowing that she was a great singer, found her to be extremely inspirational and positive in every way. She never looked backwards. She never looked backwards. She was always had great hope, always looking forward. And in fact, the seminal event of her career was at 1939 when it changed the world for civil rights. She never wanted to talk about it. She always didn't like talking about it because it was a dark time in our nation's history, and she said it was like beating a dead horse. She really never wanted to talk about it, and that's the kind of humble person she was.
Yeah.
And she never wanted anybody to make a fuss over her. In her own words, "Don't make a fuss. Don't make a fuss." So
Mm.
there's not many people around like that anymore,
Yeah,
if
no.
any.
Right, right, right. Yeah, and the ones that are through history are the ones that their legacy lives on and on and on and on, right? Like like
Right.
her legacy obviously touching so many people and touching so many things, changing things. Like, man, to be in Salzburg at that time and to have the guts, the courage to just show up and sing, and then people notice her, like that took a lot of courage to go over there as a Black woman at that point in time when Hitler was doing his Hitler thing, and people were being swept away from their homes and whatever. Like, wow, what a courageous woman.
Well, that was a time when earlier in the 20s, it was the place where blacks went to further their careers. But when Hitler came in 1933, blacks started leaving and coming back to the United States because it was a dangerous place for them. She didn't. She stayed, and she stood up to them. She stood up to the Nazis single-handedly. In 1936, the 36 Olympics, when Jesse Owens went over and won 4 gold medals and busted up Hitler's party there,
Mhm.
he had about 20 bodyguards when he was there, Jesse Owens. Marian Anderson was in Berlin right around the same time, right before that, by herself with no protection. And she was very courageous and very brave young lady at the time. So you can't take that away from her. And she never made a big fuss about it. It was just God was protecting her, and she knew it.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that is so amazing. What a testimony in so many different ways. Like her faith being as strong as it was, that it really dictated her life.
Her faith was everything to her, everything. Her mother is responsible for that. Her mother instilled the Christian faith into her Marian and her two sisters from the time they were little girls. Marian lost her father when she was 12 years old. Her father died in an industrial accident when they were building the Reading train terminal here in Philadelphia, and uh, her mother had to step up and be the father and mother to all three of the daughters. And Marian wound up going through grammar school, and then after grammar school, before middle school, after middle school, she dropped out of school in order to do domestic chores and help the family raise money. And then she was doing singing gigs all over the city of Philadelphia for $5 a shot. And then she was found out, and she was going down to a lot of the black churches and black colleges in the deep South, and Jim Crow South, which is a very dangerous place back then for black people, especially northern black people, because the uh, the people down in the South didn't like the northern blacks because they thought they were a little bit too uppity.
Mm.
So so she was in a very dangerous situation going down there, and she wound up bringing making a lot of friends down there, but still she couldn't get a decent room to stay in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible, incredible. And hats off to her mama. I mean, my word, first of all, having to be a single mom, losing her husband, and tragically, that's so sad. And then having to do this and letting her daughter, probably even encouraging her daughter, right, at such a young age to say, wow, honey, you can sing and you can go places with your singing. I've known kids throughout my lifetime that, man, they want to act or they want to sing, they want to pursue some sort of dream like that. And parents are going, oh man, no, you need to go to school. You need to have a career,
Yeah.
like you're never going to make any money at it. The odds are against you. So for her mom to be so foresighted and so open to saying, listen, daughter, you got a gift, go ahead and use it, is hats off to
Well,
her.
her mother Kim was actually a teacher down in Virginia in the early 1890s before they came to Philadelphia, before they migrated to Philadelphia. And when she got to Philadelphia, again, Philadelphia was a very segregated city, and she was not allowed to teach in Philadelphia. So, but when her father died, her mother went to work, and then Marian went to work after middle school. And Marian didn't graduate from high school until she was 24 years old because she was on the road singing, bringing money into the family. And then what the amazing thing about that is, here we have a 24-year-old high school graduate. Thank God she looked young. And she wound up, starting in 1938, she got the first honorary doctorate from Howard University, and she got 50 more honorary doctorates after that. That's a pretty singular achievement for a young lady that didn't have an undergraduate degree.
Yeah.
51 honorary doctorates throughout her life. Everybody wanted to have her at their college commencements.
Wow.
Every university throughout the world, not just the United States, but throughout the world.
Yeah, that's incredible. That is so
Yeah,
incredible. Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's amazing too, her fortitude and even finishing high school, because
yeah,
it's certainly a time that you didn't necessarily finish. Nowadays it's probably more rare for a kid to not finish high school, but back then it wasn't so rare. Kids would go to school through eighth grade, or they'd go to school, whatever, and then had to work on the family
Right.
farm or had to go to work somehow. My father never finished high school. And he was born in 35, and he never finished high school because he needed to make money for the family. And
Yeah.
his father died when he was young. And so, but he ended up being this, uber successful businessman and an incredible human being. But so for her to go and finish shows the importance that her mom probably put on education and said,
Hmm.
hey, however you need to do it, you need to do it and you need to finish. So good for her. I mean, that's pretty good. And not to let age be a factor, but to just go do it is that's pretty cool. It's amazing.
Well, I feel very privileged to be able to tell the world, about, in your audience especially, about Marian Anderson. And my next book is going to be titled, the main title is going to be The Power of Music for the Soul.
Mhm.
And I can't think of a better person life to explain that than Marian Anderson's. That's why I have that title.
Yeah,
And it's going to talk about mostly her offstage private life and who she was as a person. Everybody knows who she was, or who knew her, had heard her, knew she was a tremendous singer. But that was only 10% of her life. Her
Mhm.
other 90%, she was a trailblazing Christian humanitarian.
Yeah, yeah, that's
So,
amazing, amazing. So where can people get the book? Where can they find you?
well, the current book I have out was published in late 2020, and it's titled "Remembering a Great American Hero, Marian Anderson," and it's available on Amazon or my website. My website is www.whywelovemarian.com.
Perfect.
Whywelovemarian.com. Okay. Thanks,
Yeah,
Kim.
yeah, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for telling the story. I'm so glad that you did and that I got to share it with you. It's so awesome. Thanks for what you're doing. And I appreciate you so much. And thank you all for being here. And I hope you got as much out of this as I did. So amazing. And I just pray that until we see each other again, you keep your heart open and you live your love loud.